Good evening. I'd like to call to order the November 6th meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, we'll review and approve the agenda. Can I have a motion for tonight's agenda? Brendan, second. Hugo, all in favor? It's unanimous. Next, we have the approval of minutes from the October 16th meeting. Can I have a motion? Phil, second. Julie, all in favor? Unanimous. And one abstention? Two abstentions. And next is comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Do we have any public comments this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to reports and recognition. Tonight, we have an update on our enrollment projections and staff utilization reports with Ms. Pianka.
Good evening, everyone. It's time for the birthday report. Just kidding. Thanks for the opportunity this evening to present some important information to you about our district staffing and enrollment for this and the future years. I'd like to start by thanking so many people. There's so much information in these reports, and it is all reviewed by a number of people for accuracy, so it is so many eyes looking at it. I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Lutzy and all of the HR staff, especially Lisa and Lynn Reese, who's really the manpower behind all of this work. And of course the cabinet, Dr. Carenti and Bill and Sean, for all of their reviews. So tonight we talk about a variety of different things here, but I wanted to talk about first giving you an idea of what it is we're referring to in terms of the documents that hopefully you all received last Friday. And just to be visual about it, a copy of the memorandum on enrollment and projections, the staff utilization and enrollment reports for our certified staff, which is the blue booklet that you've received, and also the orange booklet, which is the same type of document, only it is for non-certified staff. You've also received a copy of the supplemental analyses, which looks like this. And all of these documents, to describe them for you, the memorandum on enrollment and projections really analyzes all the information that we've received from our demographer, NESDEC. And the information is based on past, present, and some projected enrollment in our school district. Also included are the demographer's charts and graphs that show us New Canaan's historical enrollment, and some information about projected enrollments. In the staff utilization and enrollment report, there's a comprehensive look at our certified staffing for the 23-24 school year. This report includes summary enrollment data, some staffing data with FTEs at all and varied levels. It also includes section class sizes for each grade, and faculty leadership positions, administration, and all of those summary totals for the district. It has many different uses as a source of information and serves as a standard reference for all of us throughout the year, but especially during our budget season. Also, there's a separate staff utilization report that's orange, as I said, with our non-certified information. And in the supplemental analyses, you will see some additional perspectives on the data in the staff utilization and enrollment report, an FTE comparison of this year, with last year. And that's at each level by each department, and a look at which classes may be under district guidelines and which are over, and also a look at the numbers in our special education programs. Because all this data is presented from several different perspectives, including the different levels of the system and specific grades, core and non-core subjects, classes and sections, it's really rather voluminous in terms of the amount of information. So for the purposes of tonight, I'll focus on a review of our current student enrollment, some educator staffing levels, and our NSDEC enrollment projections specifically. Hopefully, by focusing on this, you'll have a clearer snapshot of where we are statistically as of October 1st, 2023. So that's the closing out date that we use. And you'll also have some sense of where we might be headed in the future. As with any presentation, this data that's provided in these reports is really very detailed, which is why we got it to you on Friday. And our report today only provides you with an overview of all of the data that you've received. So let's start by getting a school district perspective first. So when we add to the K through 12 enrollment, the pre-K program, which you've heard a little bit about recently, and also the students who are outplaced from our school district, we arrive at the total district enrollment of 4,106 students, and that is to be compared to 4,163, or 57 less than last year's total overall numbers. In looking at our school district's historic enrollment, using our pre-K through 12 enrollment this year of 4,095 10 years ago, that would be 2013 to 2014, it was 87 students higher at 4,182. To give you an idea of our preschool numbers and what they have looked like, they ranged from 39 in 2019-20 school year, the next school year at 46, then 50, then 49 and 52 for this year. Now we can take a look at each level. As we wrote in the memorandum on enrollment projections, our overall enrollment is slightly below the demographer's projection. This year, our kindergarten came in at 278, which is 21 students over our projection, and 11 under the previous year, which was 289. Overall, our elementary enrollment increased by 33 students, and those are the K through 4 numbers without our preschool. And here we'll do a further breakdown by our separate elementary schools. Starting with East, East shows an increase of 20 students. South, the same amount of students as last year. And West shows 13 more students than last year. Monitoring of our enrollment at this level is important as we move forward. We currently have 30 classrooms at East, 27 classrooms at South, and 29 sections, including our pre-K at West. We have 82 sections in total of K through 4 this year, which is an increase of 2 sections from last year. Those 2 sections are a result of being up 1 section at East and up 1 section at West. And as I said, South has stayed the same. Moving on to our SACS enrollment, we had a decrease this year from 1,315 to 1,261. That's a decrease of 17 students. NSDEC projects our enrollment to increase next year to 1,286 by 25 students. The demographer projects the enrollment at SACS to decrease to 1,270 in the 2026-27 school year. And even with some projected decreases, SACS is going to remain in the high 1,200 to low 1,300 range for the next 3 to 4 years. There are 14 grade 5 homerooms and 16 homerooms for grades 6 through 8 at SACS. On to New Canaan High School. This year, our enrollment at New Canaan High School is 1,258, and it's projected to decrease next year, according to NESDEC, by 18 students to 1,240. Our New Canaan High School enrollment is projected to decrease to an anticipated 1,198 students during the 2028-29 school year, 5 years from now, which would be a decrease of 60 students. In terms of special education, our student population has increased slightly this year. The prevalence rate for our identified students this year is 13%, which is up slightly from last year, which was 12%. And our out-of-district placements are at 11%. The specific information in terms of special education can be found in your supplemental analyses of the staff utilization and enrollment report. And as I mentioned, our rate has gone up slightly over the last actually 5 years. In looking at our enrollment and our class size guidelines, this chart shows that for this year, the percentage of classes overall in the district that are at or below board guidelines is very high. As shown on page 1 of the staff utilization and enrollment report, class size guidelines for K through 3 classes are 16 to 20. Shown here is that on the elementary level, the percent of classes at or below guidelines is 100%, with no classes over guidelines. The guidelines for our grades 4 through 8 classes are 20 to 24. SAC shows many sections under guidelines, 49% to be exact, and due to the structure of the team program, as well as math placements. This chart shows us that SACS is at 99.51% within class size guidelines. For our high school, grades 9 through 12, the guidelines are 14 to 25 students per section. 99.66% of our classes at the high school are within class size guidelines. So overall, the percentage of classes at or below guidelines in our school district has remained well above 90% on average and is relatively consistent over the last 5 years. We turn now to staffing. As you can see, the number of certified staff increased by 6.96 compared to last year. Our elementary schools saw an increase and a decrease depending on where the enrollments stood and what classes were needed to be added or detracted from, all in respect to, as I said, 2 of the elementary schools, we did add 1 homeroom teacher, and then some pieces of FTEs for things like world language, music, science, math and writing specialists, language arts specialists, and tech integrators. So those again were varied by what the needs were in terms of the population in each of those buildings. At SACS, very little change, actually only a 0.5. 0.8 of that was for further instruction in RTI and some minor FTEs taken away in terms of the world language piece. At New Canaan High School, an addition of a 0.70 and again, a variety depending on the needs of students in the area of English, business, and music. And in special education, an addition of 1.6, and that would be the combination of the addition in our budget for the Literacy Academy and also some speech and language services. Our leadership numbers stayed the same, and our central office administration, the addition of a 0.6 for the preschool director that we did add in our last year's budget, and actually a shift over of a 1.0 of a position from our non-certified staff report to our certified staff report. So overall, the net increase this year in respect to FTEs at all schools, including special education, was 7.16. In terms of elementary staffing, at this level, our overall elementary staffing is 126.90, and that is up last year from last year's total of 123.6, which is a net increase for the elementary level of 3.3 FTEs. For a total of 126.9 FTEs. Our secondary staffing, as I said, at Saks shows an increase of 0.5, and at New Canaan High School shows an increase of 0.7. And again, based on the needs of students, there were some minor changes in FTEs in world languages, mathematics, as I said, response to intervention, and on the high school level in business, English, music. Again, in special education, and an additional 1.06, and that would be the combination of the speech and language services and the Literacy Academy staffing. Now back to our total enrollments and a look at NSDEC's projections. The projections of the demographer estimates that the district as a whole will increase in enrollment for the short term by 6 students, from 4,043 to 4,049. If we look at and examine by level, they project a decrease of 1 student at the elementary level, and pre-K is not included in these figures. Our demographer, again, projects an increase in enrollment of 25 students next year at Saks, from 1,261 to 1,286. They expect the high school to decrease by 18 students, from 1,240 to 1,258 this year. In terms of summarizing the content of the NSDEC enrollment projections, as you can see here, they're basically saying our enrollment projection totals from the fall of 2022 data came within 25 students of our actual grade K through 12 enrollment for October 1st, 2023, which is pretty accurate. We had a projection of 4,068, and our actual enrollment was 4,043, which is less than a 1% difference. In considering what to do with all this for our future, the factors that are now at work that will really have the biggest impact on our future enrollments are basically 2 things. One is in migration, so people moving into the school district, and the other is the number of known births. Our elementary school class sizes, again, are within guidelines, and our programs remain intact. And we have, as you can tell from what we talked about previously, we have very balanced sections in the short term. Our Saks enrollment, again, is projected to remain in the low 1,300s for the next 4 to 5 years, so not much change there. And our demographer describes our enrollment from our current number and moving into the 24-25 school year as a very slight increase of 0.15%. And according to the projections, we are entering into a short period of stable enrollment for the next 3 years. Our projections indicate a significant jump in kindergarten enrollment of 104 students. That would be for the 2026-27 school year. And it is a higher than usual kindergarten through 2033 to 2034. That sounds so far away and hard to say when the projections end. And it is important to consider those options now for the future in respect to the 26-27 school year. So those are all of the basic details. Thank you for listening, and let us know what questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Bianca. Brendan, question?
Yeah, so the big thing that stands out is, obviously the expected increases in enrollment in, maybe 4 or 5 years, 3 to 5 years. Do we have a view as to, just looking back, like I looked back at K to 4 in 2014, 15, 16. My recollection is that we had at the elementary schools a bunch of classrooms essentially doing kind of double duty, like, we'd have carts coming in with, computers and, science equipment, that type of stuff. How much flexibility do we have to do that again if we wanted to go up to 1,600 or maybe even more kids in our elementary schools? Is that something that's workable?
I'll get us started, Darlene. So part of it depends upon the distribution of students across the district, right? So we've got the 3 schools, but if it's in a concentration where it's going to hit one school, we have to have some conversations about where students are going to be sure that they're distributed across. Mm-hmm. That being said, 308 is quite a bit different than the 382. I just took my glasses off. Yeah, the 382 that's predicted. Mm-hmm. So to absorb an additional 70, 80 students would be very challenging at the very least, if not impossible given where we are. We've been looking at each of the schools to see what kind of opportunities may be there. So we've been doing a very close analysis to see how we're utilizing rooms. And there may be some opportunity to repurpose some rooms and turn some support rooms into classrooms and shift around those support rooms and do that. But one of the things about these projections, as you take a look, is where in that year you're referring to, it was a 1-year bump, and then it came back down to about the 260, 280 that we're used to. In these projections, it goes up to the 382 in 26, 27, but then stays high as you continue to go down.
Right.
When you keep looking down. 334, 304, it never goes below 300 after that, where prior 300 was the highest. Now, you're talking about births that haven't happened yet, so you have to be skeptical, or at least careful in making too many plans further out than the 27, 28. But when we look at the 26, 27 year, those 201 births have remained, that's a constant number. Those are actual students kids that were born to families that lived in New Canaan in 2021. And then the same now goes for that 2022 with the 176, which in and of itself is still higher than many of the other years. So in conversation, and we looked at the last year's projection to compare it with this, just to get a sense of, are they trying to get up or down? And last year was a little bit higher, actually, with their projection. They were projecting 26, 27 would be at 397 students in kindergarten, and this has dropped to 382. And then the following year was 301, and they bring that up to 334. So I don't know if they're, what's driving that decision on their end, but that's just some of the refinement they're doing as that date approaches. So as we look at it and as we've talked about it, we're thinking that the best next step would be to bring these data to the Resources Committee and take a very close look at those kindergarten numbers. And as you'll recall, we had SLAM in the spring do their analysis, and they gave us a low, medium, and high projection number and recommended that we use the medium, of course, as we look at it, which is a bit lower. And that would have their medium projection has the 26, 27 class coming in at 304, right? So that's significantly lower, and then has it dropping into the high 200s going on from there. So I think that the next best step is for us to pull all of this information, come to resources, have that conversation, and then make a decision there if we want to spin it off as a separate group just to look specifically at this, or if resources would like to take it up and analyze it and make some recommendations back to the board.
When they calculate this from the births, do they factor in, like, when kids are born and when they're, is it the actual birth year, or, because is this recalculated based on the new rules for pre-K, for going into kindergarten?
You know what,
I mean,
that's a good, I don't know the answer to that question. That's a good question.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit
It
later.
might shift a
There's-
little then, right?
It may. So it's averages around 30 students that we have that are born from September 2nd to December 31st.
Right.
So it would just, if it did make a significant difference, it would push it 1 year and then you'd be right back
Yeah,
to where
yeah.
you started. So, but it may have a little bit of an impact. Don't know. But yeah, I mean, when we saw the number 201 for births last year, we said, let's give that a year and make sure it holds, and it did. So the assumption, the difference in the projections essentially is and I thought this is where you were going with your question, Bob. If you look a couple of pages in on this report, if you look at page 9, it's the birth to kindergarten relationship.
Yeah.
Right, so what you see there is the ratio between the blue line is the births, and then the green line above is the actual kindergarten enrollment 5 years later from there. And so you see some consistency, and that 2019-20 year was when there were 50 more students enrolling in kindergarten than we anticipated, and you can see why we missed it, right? Because it was an anomaly there, and then it renormed. So there's some consistency there, but you just don't, it's just driven by the numbers. And they look back 3 years and they create that ratio. And if that green line were below the blue line, it would be a number less than 1. Because we're above, it's about a 1.6, 1.8 that they multiply it by. So with 200 births, using that calculation, they get to the 382 as far as enrollment goes. The assumption that NASDAQ is operating under is that the number of move-ins relative to the number of births will stay consistent. What slammed it, if you'll recall, is they didn't use that assumption. Their assumption was if your birth number is higher than normal, you're in migration, which are kids that move in after they're born somewhere else, but prior to kindergarten, is not going to increase at a proportional rate, which would bring down your birth decay ratio. So those are the two sort of competing assumptions and why we're getting some different feedback from each.
So do we have the data on what the actual births are? I didn't see it in the reports for the years 2019 through 2022.
We do. If you go to page 4, what you'll see on the chart at the top, and I'm looking at the enrollment projection report, and all of these reports are available on our website as well. They've been uploaded today.
Okay,
They're there.
thank you.
Yes.
So if you go to page 4, you'll see birth year 2018, there were 130 births. That 5 years later in 23-24 turned into 278 kindergartners. So there were 130 born in Canaan in 18, and then the rest moved in prior to the start of the 23-24 school year and came in as kindergartners. And that same in-migration impacts sort of across the boards, because it's not, there's other folks that move into town that have kids that are older, so it's first grade, second grade, third grade, and that's, again, in-migration, you heard Darlene talking about that, versus out-migration if we have more moving out. And sometimes that 4th to 5th grade, we see a little bit of out-migration sometimes, and that slows down a little bit, things like that. So I'm sorry, it's very data-rich. So if you go, those are the projected enrollments. If you go back a couple of pages to page 2, you can go all the way back to 2008 for the births, and you can track that. Now, what has me nervous as I look at the numbers, from 2008 right up till today, the highest birth year was 174, and all the others are below 150 for the most part. 1 or 2 here, but only one other is above 150. The others are running at 140, 130. And then when we go into 2021 at 201, and then the 2022 births now, we have to make sure that that's right, but it seems to be at 176. So those are 2 higher years than we've had in the 10 years prior. So I do think some conversation and planning needs to occur to be ready.
I did.
So does anyone remember how long it took from start to finish to renovate Saks? Maybe you remember, Penny. Just trying to get a sense as to if we needed to do something like that, how long it would take, roughly.
From, so what we did spend about a year, 9 months to a year, analyzing need. And then from that point, I can get you better estimates, but I think from the point that you decide we need X classrooms in this, someplace in the district, you're probably 2.5 years from having them, there. You got to figure, over a year for construction and maybe 2 summers. We typically try and do, and then the plans take a while, and then you have to get approvals. So it's definitely an over 2-year, I think, timeframe.
I think, that's one of several possible options, I think.
Yeah.
There's modulars, there's the opportunity around preschool at West, other opportunities to relocate and pick up some classrooms and some other things. So I think that's where the greater conversation, I think, would be helpful, so that if, again, whether it's resources or another group, we can talk it through, and then create some data points that we'd like to collect, go out and get those information and bring it all back. And, the problem or the challenge, of course, is we'd love to know. And the day we're going to know is the second day of school in 26, 27. And before that, we're going to be doing everything we can to gather as much information as we can, but we won't really know until they knock on our door.
Right.
But we'll do our best. That's how it works.
That was kind of what I was gonna press on was, we've got this data point of births, and then we've got this point where they show up in kindergarten, and we have imperfect or little information in between, and we're making assumptions about in-migration, which may or may not be the same for this cohort as it was in the past. And so then the question is, what other information, also imperfect, can we be gathering to try to triangulate, to do as best we can to get as close as we can, so that when we make a decision, I totally agree with starting this in resources and seeing where it goes, but getting as best information to validate what we think we need to do, while still making a decision in time for when that cohort will show up.
That's right. It'll be, no matter how much information you collect, it'll be imperfect. But we'll get as much as we can and make the best decision we can.
So to me, this suggests that we have a budget question for next year, because if you really want to get good data on what possibilities would be in a variety of scenarios, is you're going to need to budget to have probably an architect come in and evaluate all of our elementary schools or other schools and look at it and say, these are the choices, if this happens, these are the choices that you would have. And so I'm thinking that at this point, at least, we might want to be including, that money, so that we understand as a board what our potential options are, and an architect could actually give, much better. They've been doing this all over the country, or, they have resources that we don't have. They could give us better idea about to, shovel in the ground to completion, or what other options we might have.
Right, so a continuum of options can come from, yep. And if you'll recall, the projections we did initially were with SLAM, who is an architecture firm as well. And so there's some others that do this work. So yeah, I think that makes good sense. I would agree.
Are there independent sources for more real estate analysis as well? Because the in-migration question, as I was looking at these numbers, I wonder, is there pent-up demand, and a lot of the families and future projections are already here, and those were some of the bump-ups we've seen in the past couple of years? Is there a way to make some sense of this without knowing, what the economy is going to do and what the market's going to do? But I don't know if there's other resources that we can tap as we're thinking about this as well.
Yep, I think that, most definitely. And real estate is a big piece of that.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, we're going to have issues one way or another. These are good issues to have.
That's right.
These are kids wanting to come to our school, parents wanting to move to our community. So I know that we can solve this, that the community will be behind whatever solution it is. and just be a challenge we all face.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Darlene.
Anything else? Darlene, before we?
Yeah. Any other questions on staffing or?
That was the big one.
You have a looming question.
You have two just free pieces of paper there that replace the pages in your staff utilization. Just a quick update, that's all those are. You can just staple those right in. Let's see.
All right, so now we'll move into our action items. The first is a donation for the New Canaan High School light pole banner redesign. We have some information in the packet. Do you want to speak to this, Dr. Lutzy, or?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and if you have any questions, Mr. Egan's here to help us out as well. So the high school PFA would like to continue its ongoing campus beautification efforts by updating the existing banners with a new design, adding some banners to some poles that don't currently have them, and looking at a second Rams-themed design on the light poles adjacent to Dunning Stadium, the tennis courts, and the athletic field. So they've done a very nice job designing these. You have this in front of you, and you can see the banners that we have been up for probably around 10 years, give or take. Yep, okay. So they have a relatively long lifespan. It's an opportunity to kind of give them a little bit of a fresher look. As you can see, you have the athletics design with the Ram, and the Go Rams, and then the main design, which is the NCHS, home of the Rams. The estimated cost for the 65 banners is $7,800. We have used our custodial crew often to do the installation. They've helped us out quite a bit. If you remember back in 2020, 2021, we had banners specifically made for the students as a way of celebrating because of the abridged graduation opportunities that we had. So our guys got very good at working on the light poles and getting this all done. So with your approval, they can turn this around and get this order placed and get these done pretty quickly.
Great. Questions, comments? The new designs look really nice. Okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve a donation of $7,800 for the replacement of existing light pole banners with a new design, as well as adding banners to poles that currently do not have them, and installing a second Rams-themed banner on poles near athletics. Bob, second. Brendan, all in favor? Great, unanimous. Thank you to the PFA. Next, we have a donation from the All Sports Booster Club for fall coaches. You want to say anything about that?
Yep, you have the information. Let me just go to it. Here we go. I believe you saw this in the packet over the weekend. We have, again, a very generous donation from the All Sports Booster Club, this time for the amount of $53,196.43. This is following their core belief of the All Sports Booster Club that lowering the athlete-to-coach ratio leads to more effective instruction and increases the opportunities for positive coach-athlete interactions. So this is to enrich the number of coaches that are available for our students. We also, as you know, do pay for our coaches through our budget. This really is an offset so that we can provide the kind of instruction and support and supervision that we feel our students deserve. So incredibly generous on their part, and we're very grateful. So this comes from Jay Egan and Carrie and Patty from the All Sports Booster Club.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'll ask for a motion to approve a donation from the New Canaan Rams All Sports Booster Club in the amount of $53,196.43 for fall coaches. Hugo, second. Penny, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you to the All Sports Booster Club once again. Now we have some work, some policy updates from the Governance Committee. We have three. Yep, 3 policy updates for your review. Tonight will be a first reading, and then at the next meeting, we'll ask for final approval. Dr. Lutzy, want to take it from here?
Sure. So our first policy, and members of the policy committee are certainly welcome to join me. Our first is policy 5100, age of entrance and grade placement in the school system. And this is really in addition to an existing policy. 5100 has been on the books since the 90s. What we're looking to do is align this policy with the new legislation that passed this summer. As you may be aware, or you are aware, the legislation changed as far as eligibility to attend kindergarten. Where Connecticut's date was December 31st, they've rolled that up to be more in line with most states across the country, to be September 1st. So students born after September 1st, which is September 2nd to 31st, would on the surface not be eligible to enroll in kindergarten for that year and would be eligible in the following year. Now, as part of the legislation, they've required every district to provide a process through which students that fall into that range can apply and be considered for kindergarten. And so what the policy does is outline what that opportunity looks like. And you'll see on the bottom of this, and actually it's the third and fourth paragraph, where we changed, this used to say children reaching the age of 5 on or before December 31st. We've changed it to September 1st to align with the legislation there. But more importantly, down below is the waiver. And we wanted to be very specific, and this is a one-year policy here, and then we'll look and give the board an opportunity to revisit, and we would evaluate how this approach worked, if we feel it's the right thing, and then we could either codify it and keep it in or make some adjustments. So that's why we really looked at the 1 year. So children born between September 2nd, 2019 and December 31st, 2019, wishing to enter kindergarten, and children born between 18 in the same years, wishing to enter first grade, may be permitted in the discretion of the New Canaan Public Schools to enroll after sending a letter to the building principal outlining reasons for the request and after a meeting is held with the building principal. Now, the legislation speaks to an assessment, and we've talked about what that assessment might look like. So if you turn this around, what you'll see is a regulation that we feel makes sense to include with the policy, which comes right from the CDC, and it's important milestones, your child by 5 years old. And it actually has the link to the CDC site as well. It's a pretty well-designed site in that there are assessments parents can use with their child to go through and get feedback. Each of these items are the milestones that the CDC outlines for children at 5 years old. And we are including this as conversation for the principal and the parents to have this basis of the conversation when they talk about readiness for the child to attend kindergarten being younger than that September 1 cutoff. So speaking to the parents, having that conversation with them, if the parents after that conversation feel that the child is ready to enroll, that child would be eligible to enroll. And I anticipate that we would, at our discretion, of course, but that child then would enroll in kindergarten and be able to begin. So the assessment is included in the language of the legislation. This conversation is what we're considering the assessment. Because otherwise we're looking at assessment tools to test children who are 4 years old, 4.5 years old. And I think the conversation in our discussions, the conversations with the parents who know the child best can talk about this readiness, and then we can guide them and help them make an informed decision for the child to enroll. We have looked at what the numbers are, so just to get a sense of that. And this year, there are 34 students across the 3 elementary schools that are born between September 2nd and December 31st. So we anticipate, and it's fluctuated a little bit here and there. It's been, if we look across at first grade, second grade, third grade, how many of those students are, have those birthdays? The year before, it was 24 students. So 20, 30, 25, 35 is probably around the range. If there's a little bit of a dip in our kindergarten enrollment this next year, I think the following year it just catches right back up and we just continue on. I don't anticipate there being any kind of a staffing implication for us. There are some districts that are talking about staffing implications because they may have 100 more students that are in this range, or they might only have one elementary school and not the flexibility to do other things. So for us, as we look at it, we don't anticipate a change one way or the other for our staffing. There are also some other resources at that CDC site that we will be sharing with parents to help them make that decision, which is why we included the entire website link with the regulation that's there. And I'm just, if you're interested, because find it interesting. We looked at students in our district who have started between September 2nd and 31st, as how they've performed years later in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade on the Smarter Balance in comparison to students who were born September 1st and earlier, in that year. And what we actually found was no statistical significance in scores, right? Which I think speaks to parents knowing their children and having them come to school when they're ready, and probably also speaks to the sophistication and complexity of the RTI system that we have for students. If they do need a little bit of extra help along the way, they get that support. That's not the same in every district. Some have taken a similar look and found discrepancies there. But as we've looked at the data, there was no compelling story there. As a matter of fact, I think in the 4th grade, those students outperformed the other students. So, it's sort of a little up and down. But if there was something compelling there, we may have taken a different approach here. But we're not seeing that it makes a big difference one way or the other. So I think that this feels like the right approach for the board. Certainly as we go into this new year as the first time, it certainly puts districts in a challenging position to be talking to parents and to start our relationship with parents telling them that their child can't come, right? So we certainly want to make sure they're making the most informed decision possible, but whatever that decision is, we stand ready to support them as the child comes into the school. So I think the policy is reflective of those values that we all share. And Dr. Crency, I know you've been working with the principals and others on this, if you have anything to share.
Brendan, question?
I just have a question on the language. We say will be eligible to enter kindergarten the preceding September. Should we just say, during such school year, just so that it's clearer at least? So if you're 5 by September 1st, that school year, you can enter kindergarten. The preceding September is what's confusing to me.
Sure, we can take a look at that. We can put that into, that's 1992 language. Yeah, I'm glad to update that.
Yeah. Can do better.
Similarly to that, there's it's a couple paragraphs down, the one that says children who apply. It seemed to me, maybe I'm just it seems somewhat repetitive from the 2 paragraphs before. They're sort of saying we'll place a student initially based on their placement in a previous school, but then we're going to do evaluations. And the previous 2 paragraphs talk about grades 1 and 2 and other grades, and then there's a 3rd paragraph that seems to be overlapping. So I just wanted clarification, and that may just be also a 1992 sort of language, or maybe it just needs clarification for me.
Sure, glad to take a look at it. Yep, we'll take a look at it. Yep.
Other questions, edits, comments? Okay.
Do you want to do a first and second as the first reading of that?
Yep. So we'll ask just for a motion at this point to approve the revisions to the Board of Education Policy 5100, age of entrance and grade placement in the school system as a first reading. Brendan, second. Hugo, okay. Next is a policy update on substitute teachers.
This should be the easiest thing you've done all day. In the 4th paragraph, you'll see the sentence, whenever possible, only fully certified replacement teachers will be assigned to classes whose regular teachers are on a long-term leaves of absence of 60 days or more, unless granted a waiver by the State Department of Ed. That has changed from 45 days to 60 days. They've just extended the time that a non-certified staff member or non-certified person can fill in for a certified staff person without notifying the State Department and asking for a waiver. So it is in part in response to the labor shortages that we're all facing and the challenges that we have in finding certified folks to fill these things. So thought that we would update our policy in order to reflect those 60 days.
Okay, so I'll ask for a motion to approve revisions to Board of Education Policy 4121, substitute teachers, as a first reading. Bob, second. Phil. Thank you. And then the last policy update is regarding
Is our use of therapy dogs.
Yep.
That's right. So this one is not, in response to legislation, but is in response to interest by our staff members. So we began conversation about a year ago with one of our staff members about piloting therapy dog at one of our elementary schools. And we were compelled, given the research that she's brought in and the conversations that we've had and the work that she's done, to give it a try. And so by creating our policy, it creates that space for us to run this as a pilot. It does not make any commitments, as you'll see. What it speaks to is the ability to do so with principal's permission, with superintendent's permission, and with a very detailed, legally reviewed agreement, which you'll see, which came from Shipman and Goodwin and was reviewed by KERMA, that has all of the training requirements, licensure, the vaccinations, the communication expectations, and all of what it would take to do this. I will say we've had one day already that the dog has come into South School, and it was, as you could imagine, a big hit. It really went very, very well. And it's a big dog. It's a very big dog. It's a Newfoundland, I think. But just well-trained and followed the agreement. We're using this. It's working. And you'll see there's an access plan that needs to be created, understanding the building. It's very detailed. All of the work has to be completed up front. Communication to the families and to the children, and to make sure there are no allergies, and if there are, making alternate plans. Lots and lots of thinking goes in, but we want to make sure we do it right, and we want to be sure that we have some guidelines and a policy to do this with. And if it works, we can always consider other opportunities to do this, and if we feel that it didn't have the benefits that we anticipated, then there's no commitment in the policy here that we continue.
I think it's an annual agreement, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions? Okay, so now I'll ask for a motion to approve new Board of Education Policy 6720, use of certified therapy dogs, as a first reading. Erica, second. Hugo? All right, ready for the next meeting.
Just on that one, I just want to say, just reading the last sentence, I think we could probably make it, we have a couple of onlys and afters, and we could probably make it a little bit more streamlined, which I didn't pick up before in our meeting. But, so the language we bring back to the board might be slightly different, but only in meeting. And then on Brendan's point, which was really good pickup, because otherwise it didn't make sense. I think if you take out the words in the paragraphs, he talked about paragraphs 3 and 4, and you just take out the two words, the proceeding, and just put the word that, it takes care of it. But we can take a second look. I think it's because it used to be December, and it was the preceding September you could enter, and,
Well, September's even odd because we start school in August.
oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which I think you just say that school year.
Yeah, that school year,
Yeah.
at the beginning of that school year or something.
Okay. And that's why we do 2 readings of our policies.
All
Great.
right, thank you.
And then, so I took a little license. Actually, I'm going to go up to the. I wanted to take just a brief moment to say thank you to 2 of our Board of Education members who are not running and who this is their last meeting. And Ms. Pianca, you did a very nice job keeping it very succinct for them. That was a nice gift. And we have a little something for each of you as well. First is Bob Naughton. And as his term comes to a close, I want to share a heartfelt thank you with you, Bob. Your contributions to the board and to our schools will be missed, and your deep knowledge of technology's use as an instructional assessment and data analysis tool have really been an incredible boon for our district, for our board. As we move to full-scale online learning back in 2020 and beyond, It was your insight and feedback, suggestions, experience that really helped us to think through some things that many districts missed. You know, thinking about the kids at home, thinking about the cybersecurity and the work that we're doing. You really sort of drove us to make sure that we crossed all those T's, dotted all those I's, and did it in the right ways. You never hesitated to share your wisdom, your experience and knowledge, both as a professional, as a community member, and as a father of multiple NCPS graduates. And that experience has really also helped us to make the best informed decision on behalf of our kids. So Bob, on behalf of the students, faculty, staff, and the administration, I want to say thank you for stepping forward. Thank you for your service on the board and for all that you've done to help New Canaan Public Schools be the very, very best that they could be. So thank you, Bob. And we have a little something. Secondly, just to share, this year brings big changes for our district, not just Bob, but also Katrina Parkhill, our chair for most of the past 4 years, is also stepping down. Katrina has served with courage, wisdom, dignity, and compassion during what has been the most tumultuous and challenging times that any of us could have imagined. Katrina's service as chair began in November of 2019, and we all know what happened next. Navigating the challenges of the pandemic and everything that brought was extraordinarily difficult. And as superintendent, speaking for all of us here in the cabinet and principals and beyond, we can't imagine anyone being a better partner, colleague, leader, and friend than you, Ms. Parkhill. Katrina, your support, commitment, your instincts, and your wisdom have been invaluable over the past 4 years. But even more importantly, your dignity, class, grace, and compassion, even when faced with unimaginable challenges, has instilled confidence throughout our district and pride in all of our hearts. So I've learned more from you than I can ever put into words or could ever have imagined possible. And it's a privilege to say on behalf of the students, faculty, staff, the administrators, and from the bottom of my heart, we want to say thank you. You've taught us much, you've made us better, and the contributions you've made to our school district are long-lasting for sure. So thank you, Katrina.
Want to go first? Go ahead.
All right, well, nobody likes speaking after Dr. Lutzy. So, but I wholeheartedly agree with all of his comments about Bob and Katrina and appreciate the interesting and sort of wonderful experience we've had on the board over the last few years. Katrina, I just wanted to say you've been on the board for 6.5 years. You've been helping the district out for more than 10, you know, with your leadership at West beforehand. And in my experience, you've always put the best interests of New Canaan's kids at the forefront of all the decision-making that you've made and that you've led the board through. And you've realized that it's important to collaborate and to work with everyone, and that great schools really come when you have this amazing partnership that we've been able to have in New Canaan between the community and the town bodies and the parents and the teachers and the administration. And I actually really like the way we brought students into our decision-making when it's appropriate as well. And you helped lead us through COVID, which was sort of crazy, and nobody wants to go back there. But at the same time, what I was really proud of in this district is that I've always said that if we don't move forward as a board every year, if we don't look to see what the best practices are and where we want to be in 5 years or 10 years, then we're going to find out that we're, you know, far behind. And so even through all of the COVID, with all of its challenges, we were able to implement some very important policies And a lot of that was due to your leadership. And most importantly, we got the new school start times done. And we got a lot of community input, and they are, I think, a really important mental health initiative to help all of our students be as healthy as they can. In addition, we've done the innovation initiative, the Dome recently, and that's about to open. And, I mean, we're not quite finishing it up before you leave, but we just are about to dot the I and cross the T on the vision or the portrait of the graduate work, which is important to do. So I think your leadership in all of that has been great. I've really appreciated how you listen respectfully to everyone, how you answer every single email that is written to the Board of Ed, and I don't have to do that. I really like that. And I just wanted to, if people didn't know it, I think that the respect that Katrina has garnered was really shown at the convocation this year when she was given a standing ovation by the teachers and the administration there. And that kind of respect, I think that's one of the reasons that we've been labeled best districts to teach in Connecticut. That's one of the key things, you know, for wanting teachers to come here. And so thank you for everything you've done. You leave an amazing legacy, and everyone owes you an incredible debt.
I agree with everything that Penny said. Could not have said it better, but I've written a little bit here. So I'd like to thank both you, Katrina, and you, Bob, for your time on the board and your service to our community. Being a board member is not easy, requires a lot of time, energy, dedication to learning about the schools and what we do, and trying to make them better, and trying to avoid doing things that can make them worse, which is obviously tough at some points. To Katrina in particular, thank you for many years of collaboration, dedication to our community. You led us, as Brian said, during the most difficult time we've had as a board, and frankly, many of us has had as individuals. Your dedication during that time in particular, generally, but particularly during that time, was just unending, day and night, just completely dedicated to making sure everything that we were doing was the best we possibly could do for the kids. I'd say most people in our community don't really see all that, right? They see us at these meetings, but they don't, see in particular what the chairman has to do and what you did, again, for almost 4 years, working with Brian, the administration, and the other leaders in our schools to make them better. From a board perspective, you've done a great job remaining calm, remaining centered, as Penny said, focusing on the kids, and making sure that we as a board are moving forward productively, positively, even when we've disagreed. You've really done it with grace, just an unbelievable commitment to our students, and you've done a good job too at focusing on, our goals, pushing back when, others in the community are pushing toward us, trying to get in between us as board members, which is tough to do at times, and you've done a really good job with it. So I appreciate your almost 7 years, and we'll miss you.
Thank you very much, Brendan and Penny. I appreciate that. I also prepared some remarks and reflections that I wanted to share with my fellow board members, the Board of Education candidates, and the New Canaan community. I am deeply honored and privileged to have served this community as part of the Board of Education for the past 6.5 years, and as its chair for most of the past 4 years. I clearly had no idea what the future would hold when I agreed to this role. But that said, I have no regrets. I could not have imagined a more fulfilling opportunity where I would learn, grow, and be challenged, all while serving a community I love. We have been through a lot, but we accomplished more. I end my term with a deep sense of gratitude, pride, and admiration. I have worked alongside the very best in education, and I leave with an intricate understanding and an appreciation for all that makes a school system in a town like ours a great place to live and work. As I reflected on my time and all that we have experienced together as a community, I leave you with 3 messages. One is stay the course. I believe that the foundation of our school system's success is predicated on how we, and so many before us, work together to lead our district forward, maintain a culture of mutual trust and respect, and put students at the center of everything we do. These are qualities that have defined New Canaan Public Schools for years, and we should never take them for granted. As we continue to move through this challenging and transformative period in education and in our nation, we must continue to lean into these qualities and nurture and respect how we got here. Most of our policies and board practices have been in place for a long time, and they have served us well. So I encourage the new board members to take time to learn, observe, ask questions, take pause when considering changes, and stay focused on finding practical solutions in response to real issues that need to be solved on behalf of our students. The second comment I would make is about partisan politics. I see that politics divide school communities and hurt the students we are trying to help. They invite divisiveness that can have a chilling effect on civic engagement and volunteerism. New Canaan is full of brilliant, engaged, well-meaning people, and as a community, we must do better in order to attract these future civic leaders and the town officials to lend their time and talents. I would also add that it would be wise for the town and the local political organizations to formalize separation of overlapping Board of Ed and political group representation for the betterment of our community and the function of our boards. My last message is one of gratitude. Simply put, we have excellent schools consistently ranked among the top in the state and nation. Our schools are excellent because our town believes they are the greatest priority for our citizens. I'd like to thank Kevin Moynihan, Todd Lavieri, and Steve Carl for their counsel, their partnership, and leadership. Our schools are excellent because we hire the very best teachers, leaders, faculty, and staff. Dr. Lutzy, thank you. I am grateful for your partnership, your steady leadership, for always being a thoughtful and responsive listener, and for how we problem solve together through some extraordinary times. You are a strong and compassionate leader, and words cannot adequately capture your commitment and dedication to our schools and our children. Thank you to our leadership cabinet. You are the best team in the business. You help make all of us and everyone who is part of this system better. Thank you to our teachers and staff for all you do every day to help our kids reach their full potential. You have made me proud to serve and represent our schools. Our schools are excellent because our parents are engaged and supportive. Thank you to all the parents and especially our volunteers whose incredible efforts significantly enhance the academic experience, the athletics, and the arts. And lastly, our schools are excellent because our Board of Education has a long and rich history of a high-functioning partnership with our administration, teachers, and families. To my Board of Ed colleagues, thank you. I am grateful for the ways we have worked together these past few years through some big moments. We learned together, we listened to each other, we found common ground to build consensus around key issues. And to the candidates, after the election, 5 of you will be sworn in to the Board of Education. At that moment, your campaigns become history, and you take an oath to serve every single student of New Canaan Public Schools. Your views and your votes become your own, and when the party politics of the election end tomorrow, our school board should function as a group of elected representatives as the New Canaan Board of Education to govern our schools. And now, perhaps more than ever, we all must be unified in this work. Our students are watching. So in closing, my message to the community is of appreciation for your interest, your support, your outreach. Please continue to hold the Board of Education to a high standard of excellence. The Board of Ed should lead our school district forward with a steadfast focus on children, a will to listen, learn and build consensus as often as possible, and actively listen to all stakeholders on behalf of every individual student in our school community. That is our duty. Signing off with thanks and a full heart. Thank you all very, very much. Try to finish the meeting. Comments from the public?
I'm going first. I hate going after Sherry. Are you there? Okay. Sorry. It's kind of weird being back here. First off, thank you to Brian and your team for all you do for our children and community, and thank you to the board. Katrina, when we asked you many years ago if you would consider running for the Board of Ed, we are all so lucky that you said yes. In partnership with the board, Brian and his team, you have navigated a very difficult environment and yet accomplished so many great things and have also left our schools on such solid ground. When I first came onto the Board of Ed, Hazel Hobbs was chair. For those of you who do not know her, she is sadly no longer with us, but she was a champion for our children, for education, a longstanding Board of Ed member and chair. She would help us all get up to speed when we were the new Board of Ed members, passing down all her tips and wisdom. One was to always make sure you do all your Christmas shopping before December because of all the budget meetings that you have and negotiations. I always thought that was a good one. She encouraged all of us to treat our role on the Board of Ed with the utmost respect because we are representing our town and community, to treat all with kindness and uphold all of the board's longstanding traditions. Another piece of advice was that once the executive board was established, she encouraged all of us to leave politics at the door. Katrina, you have always done this and so much more. You have faced many challenges, and you have always led with deep integrity and passion. You listen to all sides, and you always do what you think is in the best interests of our children and schools. You are positive in all situations and kind to everyone. I am so proud that I was able to serve this town with you for a portion of your term and to call you a dear friend. Thank you for all you have personally sacrificed to serve this community so well.
I think you forgot to give your name and your address.
Oh, sorry.
Sherry West, West Hills. So I stand here also with gratitude so much for our administration and our excellent teaching staff. And I wanted to add on to the gift of words for Katrina, who is truly such an exemplary and impactful leader. And as Katrina departs, and as we have a transition with some new board members, I think it's important to define what truly made Katrina so impactful. And I think it's important that we recognize her bipartisan and inclusive leadership, her commitment to serve not for a personal agenda, but in support of our world-class educational system, her collaboration and behind-the-scenes work and consensus building, her care to always center students in the decision-making, and her consistent and vocal support of our excellent administration and teaching staff. And Katrina, I just want to say on a personal note, thank you for leading by example. My son, our students are watching. Thank you for advocating on behalf of our collective interests and making our student success your priority. And in a time when the success of our school district hinges not only on academic excellence, but also on fostering an environment of respect, collaboration, and belonging, we all have so much to learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Announcements and future business.
Okay. So our next, announcements. So tomorrow's a professional learning day, and so school is not in session, but voting will be here at Saks and other locations. We have a very engaging day planned for our staff across the board, and we'll give you an update on that in the future. We are also deep in our budget conversations in preparation for our budget workshop and other things that will be happening in the next couple of weeks as we move forward. I do want to share briefly the presentation with Mark Brackett last Thursday. Was very well received. We've received multiple emails from folks across the district, staff and parents and community members alike. We've also asked the staff for some feedback on what they thought of the presentation and next steps as we continue doing this work. So I think that was a very successful evening, thanks to Dr. Crenti and Dr. Bliss, and of course Mark, who continues to be a good friend to the district and a good partner in this. We mentioned Penny mentioned the planetarium. We are just about across the finish line on that. So we look forward to getting that open in the next couple of weeks. and really starting to bring people there and see the show and experience what all this excitement is about. And we'll make sure everyone here and others are invited to come and join us and to experience that together. It's really going to be something special. At our upcoming board meeting, we'll be swearing in our new members. We'll have our organizational meeting, which we always do as we go into the year. We'll also be sharing our budget assumptions and our budget calendar. As you know, we look at our district goals, and from those flow our budget assumptions, which then inform the work as we put that budget together. Bob, you'll be glad to see in the budget calendar, we've kept the meeting in January, in between the first and second meeting for the board, so that we have the opportunity to provide the feedback and take a look. So, yeah. Well, it's a good one. But, and then we'll have our statement of accounts for the month before. And just one last thing, we have an audit committee meeting tomorrow morning where we'll be talking about the audit from FY23 and looking at, finishing up any documentation, whatever else we need for that. So, there we have it. All right.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I think it has to be Bob.
Yes? Bob? Want to go again? Bob?
Can you second it?
Yeah, I can. Brendan, all in favor? Thank you. Good night.